This is Connie Rufner. I am the interviewer, and we are talking to Ann Montebell, and she's the narrator for this one. You were a teacher. You were a home ec teacher?
Yes.
Okay, and where did you teach?
I taught in East Brady for 2 years, and I taught in Cornwall where our governor taught in Pine Grove Mills. And I lived 4 miles from Lebanon, and I never drove. I always walked. I never owned a car till I got married. My husband bought it for me.
So where all did you walk to?
I walked to all my students' homes twice a year and met all their parents, ate with them. You know, I had to chaperone dances. We had to make the things for the plays, make all the costumes and stuff. So I was chaperoning, and so I was dancing with the kids, you know. And then I asked Alice to dance. She said, "You're not going to dance with me." I said, "Why not?" "Why?" She said, "Because I'm colored." I said, "Are you colored?" "I'm colorblind." "I thought you were like everybody else, aren't you?" She said, "Nobody ever danced." I said, "Well, I'm dancing with you because you're a better dancer than I am."
Now, when was that? What year was it?
Well, that was in 1943.
And how old were you?
23. See, I was only 20 when I started.
So you were born in 1920.
1920, That was what I did with Alice. And then the cafeteria worker said, "Are you going down to," what was her name? I should know it. I said, "Yes." She said, "She'll never let you in the place." I said, "You watch me." So I went down and I said, "You know what? I was watching her. She made the best pie. She was a wonderful cook." And then she'd roll the dough, you know. I said, "You know what? I'm going to come down and watch you cook, because I read it in the book. There's nothing like watching people, very good at it." So I went down. Then I said, "Now that I've learned how I can do it, how about let me bring a couple of my students down?" And she let me. And that's what they should do. They should bring in these women that know how to do the pierogi to the home ec class or whatever class and teach them the culture of the community.
That's a great idea.
You know, they're supposed to teach them, not just go in there instead of having a study hall. I think if you maintain the culture of the area, that it's a wonderful thing for the historians to remember.
You said when you first went to teach, and you went up to East Brady, and they had a home ec room for you.
Only for the people that have wealth. And all these people were on relief down there.
So all the people were on relief, and they had electric
It was
sewing
a very
machines at
low
the home-
income group.
Yes, up there.
Oh, yes. I mean, there was only Rexide was there as a factory. But nobody had money those days. I told you I made $1,200 a year.
Right.
And I paid $10 a week for my room, and I had to pay to eat with Mrs. Miller. I had my kids come in and wash the windows, and I told them they could wear blue jeans, and then you don't wear them. So I told them they could wear them, and Miss Weibel, I think it was Miss Weibel, went up to the principal and said, "Do you know what her class has on today?" And he said, "What?" "They're wearing overalls." And he called me in. He said, "What'd you do that?" I said, "Because we're going to wash the windows, and I don't want the boys looking up and seeing their pants," I told him. And he said, "But I said, "I don't care if the janitor does it. My kids are going to learn how to wash windows so they can clean when they have them at home." So that took care of her. I don't think she spoke to me very much. I didn't care.
When you went, then they had 3 electric sewing machines, and you told them
Everything was electric.
Right.
I didn't want it. And then I wanted a coal stove, gas stove, and an electric stove.
So they could learn how to cook and sew on what they had.
Yes. And then I remember I said, "Now we're going to have chicken." Now I watched my mother clean it, and I said to Bill Abernathy, "Bring me in a chicken." "And what are you going to do?" I said, "We're going to have it." I said, "I never cleaned one, Bill." He said, "I'll take care of it." So I said to the kids, "Bill Abernathy's killing the chicken." So we looked out, and it was running all over, you know. So then I had the hot water, and we went down, we plucked it and cleared it and stuff. That was the only time I ever did it. But the kids had to do that at home. I mean, they didn't have a cut-up chicken like we have now.
So you really taught them how to actually
live on nothing.
Yeah.
And how to buy. And then I had catalogs, and I say, "Your husband makes $20 a week. Now you're going to buy furniture. Now you have to pick out how much you're going to spend and how you're going to budget it." And I did all those things. Then I decided, after I was in there for 4 years, I went to Mercyhurst, Penn State, Carlow, and IUP. When I went down there, I got a job down in Cornwall. Then I left there, and I was going to get my master's in English, and Eleanor said to me, "Come and be my dietitian." I said, "I don't know a thing about dietetics." She said, "I'll teach you." So I worked for her for a year for $100 a month, and then she had me do the lab work. From the lab, they'd come in with blood stuff, so I had to do that while they were eating, you know, so I learned how to do that. Then my husband said to me, "Why don't you get a job in Pittsburgh? I get tired coming clear to here." I said, "Oh, I don't know," because I was never going to get married. So I said, "Okay." okay. So then I went up to Suburban General. Oh, I worked as a dietitian at West Penn for one summer, $50 a week, a month. So then I went there. I worked as a soda jerker too at McSorley's in Ohio River Boulevard. I worked there. I worked in Sylvania one summer. I worked at the Hershey plant one summer.
Did you really making candy?
Yeah. I did a lot of different things. Never made money, but I never got in trouble, you know. But anyway, I decided then to go to Pittsburgh, and then I was therapeutic dietitian, special diet. Then Mr. Mills called me up. He was the administrator, and he said, "Come on up." He said, "I want to see you." I went up, and he said, "I want you to be the administrative dietitian and therapeutic." I said, "What?" I said, "I'm getting my degree. I'm working on it. I'm taking a bus into Carlo." And I walked up all the steps at that time. And then I had to serve meals to the night people. Oh, I had to do everything. So he said, we caught him stealing. So he said I had to fire him, and I have nobody there. You have to take over. I said, "Well, how much money am I getting?" He said, "Well, what are you getting now?" I said, I think it's 110. He said, "We'll give you 130. I said, "How much does he make?" Well, he said, "He has 3 children, you know, and he's a man." I said, "But I have to work." I said, "I have to visit the patients. I have to do the trays. I have to do all this stuff." He said, "No." And I felt sorry for the patients because I had 120 patients, so I said yes. And I did that while I'm going to school. Then I had to work under a Miss McConnell. In order to get certified, I had to take these extra credits, and then I had to be certified for 3 years, and she had to approve me. And then one of the doctors called me up, and he said, "We don't want her visiting our patients." I said, "What?" Because I wasn't visiting patients. He said, "You have to visit them because she goes up and says, 'You have to eat this. You cannot do without. If you have leukemia, you have to eat raw liver.'" He said, "She makes them." And he said, "She's turned them all off." So I had to tell her that she wasn't allowed. Now she is going to sign the paper for me. And now what do I say? So I said, "Hey, Miss McCormick," I says, "I was talking to the staff doctor, and he said, 'You know, Miss McCormick has so much to do.' We were down there, and I see how busy she is." He said, "Why don't you help her out and visit the patients?" Because he said, that way it'll relieve her, because she's a little older than you. And I decided I'd have to ask you first, because if you don't approve, I won't do it. She said, "Well, isn't that nice of them?" So I got that one.
Where were you born?
I was born in Brandy Camp.
Now, where's Brandy Camp?
It's right outside of Brockway and Ridgeway. It's a small little mining town. My dad was a check weighman at the mines. My grandfather had a big store there. He had a butcher shop. You know, we made pizza. My Uncle Sylvia gave us the recipe for the pizzas that we made years ago. You know, we had a pizza shop up here, and ice creams. My husband had that. My husband was a graduate of Penn State, but he was he graduated in animal husbandry, but he was a salesman. But he could foresee that this town needed the kids needed something, and I wanted to put up a nursing home, and he said, "No, we have to worry about the kids." He said, "I never learned to swim." He said, "I'm putting in a pool." We didn't even have the stand paid for, and every year he'd make it bigger. I said, "Make the pool big enough so we don't have to enlarge it." So he made the pool, and then we had to borrow $450,000 for that. I had to sign for that, and then that wasn't paid for, and he decided hockey was the sport of tomorrow, so he put in the rink for $750,000, and that wasn't paid for, and we let the kids that didn't have anything go in for nothing, and I would give the ones that were bad free membership so they could help me, because I'd say, "You're so bad, you know all the bad kids." And then I had a tablet and a dictionary in the office, and if they swore, I had them come in and write definition. I said, "Your vocabulary is too limited because you don't have to swear. Now you pick up some more words." Because I always tried to help them. You know, I wasn't mean to them. And I told this one kid, I said, "I'm going to tell you how bad your reputation is." I said, "If you were standing here with Gary, and Gary had $40 in his hand, and the police came up and somebody was missing $40, they would say that you're the one that took it and gave it to Gary." I said, "That's how bad you are." Now I said, "I want to change that image of you. I want you to learn to be nice and to be thoughtful and not steal. If you want anything, I'll give it to you. If you don't have enough to eat, I'll give you a pizza." I said, but don't be like you are." So I helped him. My husband said, "You always get these." I said, "Hugo, anybody can be good. These kids are single parents. They have no money. They don't have anything to do." So, and I went down and wanted the county commissioners to get a bus and get all the kids off the street and take them up free. They wouldn't do it. And then we put in a little league field because he wanted the kids to play baseball. And I told you about the lady that said they came from Furnace Run. and they'd come up with their lunches.
Yeah.
Take a shower up there because they didn't have it at Furnace Run. And then he'd take them home at night if it were bad. And he always took the kids home. He never let them walk when they played hockey or anything. He made sure they got home safe. He was a man of all seasons, and he died at 58, and I was 60. I've been a widow for 33 years now, long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you meet him?
I met him up at Penn State. My girlfriend was looking for a husband. I wasn't going to ever get married. That wasn't in my schedule. She wanted to get married at Penn State, so she said, let's go out. And where will we go? She said, let's go to the movies. I said, you don't find a man at the movies. It's dark. You can't even talk, right? We went to the movies, and I didn't have any money. I had spent a quarter to go to the movies for a man that she didn't even find. So afterwards, she said, well, let's go to the Skeller. Gary has a picture of the Skeller now. I said, oh, I don't drink. I never drank till I got married. I let the guys drink because they always tell you the truth then. I learned that. They said, you're so strange. I said, I know I'm strange, and I'm going to stay that way. And so if they ordered me a 7-Up and I went to the bathroom, I'd come back and I'd say, here's a quarter, order me another one. You could have put something in that drink. So I wasn't smart, but I was stupid, but I was foxy. So we went to the Skeller, and we walked in, and I had on a white pleated skirt, and I had long black wavy hair, and a pink sweater. And I was 23 or 24, and we went to the bathroom. I said to Virginia, there's nothing here either. All the booths are full. So when we walked out, Hugo emptied the booth. So I said, hey, Virginia, here's the booth. And he goes, oh, he was smooth. Would you lovely ladies care to join me? I said, what do you mean join you? We thought the booth was empty. He said, well, just my friends are leaving. He said, but you may stay. So I went out and I said, hey, he's a wolf. You watch that one. So then we went back and sat down, and I said, I'm not drinking that. And I said, I'll go home first. So when we got out there, he decided I was going home last. And I was smoking then. And he was trying to tell me, why do you smoke? I said, because it's none of your business. I said, I do what I want. My mother bossed me. I said, I'm my own boss. So I went, and he took me home. And then this was summer school. I was taking a 500 course in history so I can have an extra minor. He came, he brought me a carton of Luckies, and he says, here they are, but you look awful when you smoke. I said, I know, but it's the principle of the thing. I just don't like people telling me anything. So then he wanted to date me. He said, who are those jerks you're dating with? I said, oh, I go up to a student union because I had to study to get my grades, I had good grades, but I worked for them. So he says, they're all jerks. He said, how about a date? I said, well, we'll talk about it. So we went out, we went to Old Main, and he put his jacket on me, and he wanted to know how tall my father was and how tall my mother was. I said, well, I think she was 5'10". I think my dad was 6'2". I don't know. What diseases do you have? I said, oh, I don't know. I think we have tuberculosis. And he did a case history on me. What do you like to do, and what are your interests? I said, I like drama, and I don't like anything dirty or sexy. I says, I'm not into that. I don't know any stories. I hate that. And I says, and I like the beautiful things in life, and I like the underdog. I like to work, but I'll work with everybody, but I prefer helping the poor and the disadvantaged. And so I went in and I said to Mrs. Schaefer, you know what? I never had a crazy date like this. Guess what happened? It had nothing to do with sex. I don't know. He did a case history on me. I never had anybody want to know how tall everybody was in my family or anything. So then I went down to IF ball with him, and I had made a white dress. And Jim Tremarky, the Tremarkys from Ford City, was a relative, was his roommate. And I said, now remember, you'll sleep, I sleep. When I come, I sleep in my room and you go home. You don't sleep in my room. And that'll be a rule. Okay. So I said, but I said to him, you know what? I said, catch me. I'm going to fall backwards. I want you to catch me. Guess what? What? He didn't catch me, and I went down like a bump on a log. And I said, why didn't you catch me? He said, because I never had a date that was that crazy. He said, who ever heard of falling on the floor? I said, well, I learned that at Mercyhurst. Our phys ed course. And I wanted to show you I could fall. He said, well, you fell on the floor. So that was one episode of crazy things I did. I did a lot of dumb things, but a lot of fun things. And then he kept dating me and dating me and dating me. And I finally, we got married. We set the date about 10 times. And then the last time he set it for Labor Day. And he said, if you don't marry me Labor Day. I said, I don't want to get married Labor Day now because I'll be in labor all the time. I said, I don't want that date either. He said, well, you're either going to get married Labor Day or I'm leaving. Well, so we set the date. And then the night before, he told his mother and dad he didn't want to marry me, and I told my mother I wasn't going to get married. And both of them said to each of us, you better not make fools of us at the altar. You've been going together, fighting back and forth for years. Now you're either going to say yes or we're going to come up in the altar and make you say it. So that's how we got married. But we've had a wonderful, I was glad I married him because he was a wonderful person.
Yeah.
And he did a lot for everybody. He was a man of all seasons. But we had differences, because I had my ideas and he had his. But I always tell the kids, let them be boss. You know why? Because if something's wrong, it's his fault. He met my mother and he asked her how tall my father was. He's still dating me. And she said, I think, they called him Porky. She said, I think Porky was about 5'11 and a half. He was about a half inch tall. He said to me, you told me he was 6'2". I said, Hugo, he died when I was 3 years old. Did you think I measured him in the casket? Because he wanted tall children because he had dairy husbandry where they bred cattle and they had certain characteristics they needed in the cattle. He wanted a tall family. His parents were short.
So that's why he asked you all that.
Yeah, to make sure he wasn't, and I had to be Catholic. Then he found out I was half Austrian. He thought I was a mongrel then.
Well, you said you had tuberculosis and you were in a sanitarium.
Yes.
When did that happen?
In 1948, we were going up to Boston Lion Inn Hospital. Mr. Mills was my CEO at the Good Samaritan. He went there, and we always liked Mr. Mills. And I always said I was going up there, so we were driving up, and I was getting car sick. And we were married in September. This was, we'll say, probably 4 or 5 months after we were married. And I said, oh, I'm so car sick. So Hugo said, well, we're going to drive back. I said, no, I want to go to Boston. He said, no. He said, you're so sick. I said, oh, I know. I'm just car sick. I always get car sick when I ride. So we came back and they found out I was pregnant. So the doctor said, we're going to abort you. I said, no, you're not. He said, you're going to die. I said, well, I'm going to die, but you're not aborting me. So then I went to the sanitarium on my birthday, and Hugo sent me flowers that day. And I can remember walking in, and the blanket had tuberculosis sanitarium. Oh, and that was like heaven.
Really?
Well, at that time, it was like having what disease? Worse than cancer, like the plague, because it was horrible, And so I went and I told Dr. Spencer, I said, you're not going to abort me. He said, nope, we never do. He said, but I want to tell you, it'll be okay while you're carrying it, but after you have the baby, that's when we have to watch you. That's when you break down again. So that's why I had to keep going back. Then I had 2 more after that, and I didn't want to be around them. I never was positive, but I wanted to make sure that they didn't do it. So I had my mother raised the 2, and then my daughter, who's out there, she died at 19. She was in an accident. And then I have Tom, who's down in Maryland, and he's going to be 60, and she'll be 63, and he'll be 61, and Gary will be 59 at Christmas Eve.
So what did they do at the sanitarium to make you well? What did they do?
Nothing. I had pneumothorax. That's one side of my knee is lower than the other. I took pyramidosalicylic acid. I took pneumothorax. And since that time, I don't use a lot of medicine. Now my blood pressure's up, so I'm taking a blood pressure pill. But I take an aspirin a day, and I use holy oil and holy water whenever I hurt something. I'm very limited, and I eat 6 meals a day, and I try not to eat too many sweets and things. Like I'll eat 1 piece of candy, or I don't do anything.
So you got better by yourself. It got better by yourself.
Yeah. I was supposed to be dead in 5 years when I had Gary. So I went down to the foot doctor with this friend of mine. His mother and I worked up at monastery for dinners, and I was dating him. He was my friend, because I wasn't going to get married again. And we were near West Penn. I said, hey, Fred, I'm going over and see Dr. Gaisford. So I walked in, and I said to the girl at the switchboard, is Dr. Gaisford here? She said, yes, do you have an appointment? I said, no. She said, he doesn't see patients. I said, oh, doesn't he? She says, no, there's no point in calling him. I said, would you just do one thing for me? I said, just call him and say, Dr. Gaisford and Montebell's downstairs. Is that okay? I said, I don't want anything. He said to go right up. I said, thank you, because I knew. And I went up, and he took a picture of me, and he said, I'm so glad you're here. We used to call him, here comes Jesus with the 12 apostles. And he brought in the nurses and the other doctors that he was teaching, and he took my picture, and he said, this patient of mine is supposed to die in Gary's 58. whatever the year was. He said, and she's still living after 5 years, and he put me in the medical journal. And I never prayed to get well, but I think there's a time to be born and a time to die. When the nurses would interview me, tell me what was going to happen, I'd say, you don't know what's going to happen. I might get in the elevator and the cable breaks and I'll die on the way down, and you're telling me what's going to happen in the OR? Nobody knows what's going to happen to you. Only God knows. So I say, where did you go to school and what are your interests? You know. Another time, they thought I had cancer of the breast. They thought I had Hodgkin's. No, my husband got in the elevator, and this doctor was there. Now, Hugo was in the service, and he only made private because he came home to his brother-in-law's funeral, and at that time, it wasn't considered a reason to leave the service. So he went AWOL, came home to his sister's husband's funeral, and then he went back, and when he got back, the officer's training kid had already gone, so he missed the class. So he was only ever a PFC, and he's a graduate of Penn State, smarter than any of the PFCs of the officers. So anyway, he said, he's in the elevator, and he says, hello, Colonel Sains. He was a lieutenant colonel. He was his boss. And he said, I know you. Who are you? He said, I'm Montebell. He said, I was a PFC. Remember, I used to get chickens for you. Oh, he said, that was 40 years ago, you know. And he said, what are you doing here? He said, oh, I have a patient. I'm doing a biopsy on her. He said, that patient's my wife. And it was Dr. Sains, and he came down then, and they did it right away then, and he came down, and or Dr. Spencer said, it's tuberculosis. It is not Hodgkin's. We thought it was Hodgkin's. And then they operated on my gland 6 hours on each side. And Dr. Gaisford did it, and I had Blue Cross, but it was not covered for communicable diseases, so he had to pay for all my hospitalization and doctors, but he wouldn't charge me a thing. He took whatever he could, but he never charged me a cent. Can you believe that?
Wow.
And I have to go see him.
Yeah.
I called him last week. Definitely. He said, I'm frail now, but I said, I'll be down, doctor. Gary's going to bring me.
So your husband, he was in the war. Did he go to Europe?
Oh, yeah. He was on the hospital ship.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on the Andrea Dora. And his parents went over to the Andrea Dora to Italy, and when they came back and landed, and then the next time it went over, it sunk or something. So he was on the Andrea Dora. And then his brother was in the service, and he was in France and Italy. Yeah, they were all in the service. And I remember Evelyn told me that her aunt said that Roosevelt is sending all our butter to Russia. Because we had rations then, you know, gas rations. It didn't bother me because I didn't drive. And I remember when I was teaching in East Brady, what was her name? Oh, Janet Elder said, why don't we go to Pittsburgh and go to the play? I said, I don't have any money. She said, well, we'll just go. It only takes about $35. We'll catch the bus. We'll catch the train. Now, you had to go to the school board meeting, get permission to leave a half hour early, you know. And then we had to get the ticket. And I went home to Mrs. Lowther, where I lived, and I said, hey, Mrs. Lowther, I want to go to Pittsburgh. Do you still want to buy my coat? Because I had this camel hair coat that she liked, and she always, I really like that coat. I'll give you $25 for that coat if you ever want to sell it. I said, she used to bake for a living. I said, you still want my coat? She said, yeah, why? I said, I want to go to see a play with Janet down in Pittsburgh, and I need $35. She said, I'll give you $35. So I sold the coat and went to the play with Janet, and we came back. We stayed one night at the hotel and came back the next day so we could teach Monday. And when I went home, my mother said, I had the old coat on. She said, where's your coat? I said, I sold it. She said, what? She said, I make $2 an hour. You know how long it took me to buy that coat? I said, I can't help it, Mom. I don't do anything in East Brady except go bowling once a week, and I can't even afford a thing. And Janet and I decided to go. So she never forgave me for selling her coat.
Do you remember what the play was?
No, I can't remember the play.
Did you enjoy it?
Oh, yeah. We had a good time. And I called her, and she lives in Oil City. She never called me back. She's probably dead now because she's like 3 years older than I am. I like to keep up with all the old people, but not many of us around.
So the train stopped in East Brady?
Yeah, we had a
You just
hula
went down to the station and got on?
Oh, yeah, I went, but I'd never go. See, I never went alone because I'm the kind of a person that picks up everybody, you know. My mother used to say, God, I worry about you. I said, God's looking. And I can remember my cousin died of tuberculosis when she was, we'll say, 25, and I was the dietitian at Suburban in Lebanon then. And I went to Philadelphia to see her. her because my aunt said she was dying, and I went down and I stayed there for a couple of days, and she died. And then I got in the train, and she was in her casket, and we were going to Ridgeway. And we had a player piano when I was growing up, and we used to play in the baggage coach ahead, and it was about taking a casket back. Mary and I used to sing that song. I think I cried all the way home when I did that, because she was only 25 when she died. Beautiful girl. They used her as a model for the Blessed Mother when we went to Mercyhurst. Anyway, I remember those days. I have so many good memories. But you know what? We have the joyful, sorrowful, glorious, and luminous mysteries in our rosary. We don't worship the Blessed Mother. We love the Blessed Mother. We worship only God. And I think the sorrowful mysteries seem to last forever, don't they? I wanted to go to Betty Crocker out of Milwaukee after I graduated from Penn State. I wanted to go out and work in her testing kitchen. Well, that was my dream, but I didn't do it because I couldn't afford it. I had to teach school to make money. I was always poor. Now, I sold the place for $1 million, but we had over $1 million in it, so I paid it all back, and we gave things to people instead of charging them. And everybody thinks I'm wealthy. I say I don't have money, but I have many friends and many memories. I've known what it is to have prejudice against you. That's why I don't care what your color is. I don't care what your nationality is. I don't care anything about you. If I can help you in any way, I will. And Hugo was the same way. So anyway, those are my dreams, my mementos, some of them.
Thank you. We really appreciate it.